Welcome to Bridging Chicago, a podcast that aims to connect our listeners to Chicago's business, community, cultural, and charity leaders.
Hello and welcome back to the Bridging Chicago podcast. We are continuing our season 8 kickoff here with episode 2, and we're continuing our podcast with Kelly Fair and Cecilia Cuff. We have already talked about so much and it has been amazing, but we actually need to talk about the reason that you're here, so we'll make sure we get to that. We kind of started at the end of the first part, which, by the way, if you haven't listened to the first part, make sure you go back and listen to it. It's really good. But towards the end of that, we kind of started talking about what communities need and what especially young people in these communities need and what they need to see. And I think part of that, and that segue into this second part, Kelly, is mentorship, which I understand is what Polished Pebbles is all about. Mentorship and development and workplace development specifically for young Black and brown girls. And before we really get into the nitty-gritty of Polished Pebbles, can you tell me why, like how you came to the realization that mentorship was so key and how it became the focus of what you wanted to do?
Sure. So I often say to people I mentor because I was a girl who was mentored. So I was just very fortunate to have women who very unselfishly shared with me what the blueprint of success looked like. I'm also very fortunate because I had parents who advocated for me on a couple of different levels. And so when there was this thing called Take Your Daughter to Work Day back in the 80s and 90s, I don't know how I found out about it, but I did. And I went home to my parents and I was like, look, girls don't have to go to school on this day. I can go to work with dad and get, and I was excited. I would get McDonald's for lunch and I would get to hang out with my dad at work. And so when I think about that experience, I got just that and got all this exposure. When I, fast forward to 2009, when I started Polished Pebbles, I thought about what would make girls embrace communication skills, which was our mission and focus. And I thought, why not use the future workplaces, the campus, to understand why being a great communicator really matters? Because it made sense for me when I did Take Your Daughter to Work Day. And it lit a fire in me. When I say that I saw the blueprint of success, it was stuff like the Ms. Foundation creating Take Your Daughter to Work Day. It was Essence magazine, magazine for African American women. And that was a form of mentorship for me because it was one of the only places that you could see media images of African American women. I wanted to be an Essence lady as a girl. Yeah. They were beautiful, they were bold, they had families like my mom, and they had careers. And so at 13, I thought I wanted to be a cosmetologist. And I told my mom, I was like, yeah, this summer. She was like, you want to go to day camp? I'm like, girl, no. Like, I need to get a job because I was an Essence lady. And so thank God my mother didn't hate on me and say that's dumb. She looked in the yellow pages because there was no smartphones back then and found Dudley's Beauty College on the south side of Chicago. Black-owned hair care company that also had a string of beauty colleges. They mentored me. They took me in and I let me intern for free for 2 half days that whole summer. But that became a blueprint for me as to why I was successful. I continued to work throughout high school, went to college, grad school, had really strong work supervisors who mentored me. And I wanted to create that same kind of ecosystem for girls when I started Polished Pebbles in 2009.
That's so cool. Cecilia, I get the sense that Kelly is someone who, like, she doesn't have to convince you of why you should jump on what she's doing. It's like, you want me to be a part of that? Yeah, sure. But can you share with us sort of how you partnered with Kelly and why you? I mean, I know that your organization is very focused on mission, is mission driven, and so because of that, tell me how this partnership kind of happened and why you wanted to be a part of what Kelly is doing here.
Absolutely. I think as Kelly alluded to, I was also a woman who was mentored. I was a young girl who was mentored. And so having my mother, who was an incredible, strong woman, and her leading me in certain ways. Or I remember there was a camp counselor I had, Melody Stewart, when I went to like an African American history camp, who I looked up to. So I had these people that would be very instrumental in shaping. And then even again, as I entered my career path through the hospitality design career, I had people that I looked up to where, I saw Susan Santiago, and I remember the first time I saw a woman wearing a red suit, I was like, what is this? What is this? Because this is now what I'm doing. And so wearing suits every day, I wanted to be in corporate America. And so I think being able to look up to women was something that I never took for granted. And so as a result, leading a mission-driven career path as a whole, it's the necessary byproduct. So I have the skills, I have the training, I have the industry experience. And so, but I don't have the engaged young women and that structure. And so, being able to have partners like Polished Pebbles and Kelly Fair, who is this visionary who already has the engagement of young women, which is very important as well. When you see Kelly interact with the young women and she's giving them, these are the rules, and it's like, I think it's a little bit of tough love. It's good love, but it's tough love.
Demander.
That's a really good.
I'm gonna use that.
but they listen. And so I taught 8th grade right out of college on the south side of Chicago. And at the same time, I worked, in hospitality to pay for being a teacher. And so that teacher mentality has always been within me. And so, I can probably name 10 countries around the world that people who I've mentored have opened up their own restaurants or opened up their own spaces, and I'm so proud of all of those mentees. And so it felt natural to be able to work with and support the programming and the young women that Kelly has mentored and Polished Pebbles has mentored, because they are engaged, they are driven, they are career oriented. And those are all things that I wanted to be as a young woman. And so, again, I feel like it was a natural fit. And so, because of the accountability factor, which is something that I think is really important when you are building any business or building a career, Polished Pebbles leads with accountability. And that's why it felt like a natural fit. Whereas I think other programs don't necessarily have that level of accountability.
Yeah, it's so important. Before we get too far, because we've figured out we can, let's back up a little bit, because I want you to share about Polished Pebbles. Share with our audience what it is, what you do, how people become involved with it, sort of just give us the lay of the land here with Polished Pebbles.
Absolutely. So I feel like I'm one of the most fortunate people in the world, because I think of myself as a sculptor of the future voices of school-age girls, their future professional voices. So it's helping them give a pathway to explore different career opportunities, to think about what skills are really critical, necessary for them to get their character. Our core value is having strong communication skills. And so we do that through a couple of 4 core programs. Our school-based program is how most folks know us, as a school day after school program. We cover about 900 square miles of programmatic real estate. So we have some programs in the south suburbs, western suburbs. We've gone as far north as Albany Park, as far south as Altgale Gardens. With that program, we have our Every Girl's a CEO program, which is our summer work study program. Girls learn career readiness skills and earn their first paychecks. And doing that in the summer. Mommy and Me, we'll talk about in a second, is our opportunity for moms and daughters to build bonds while building businesses together. And then our Pink Hard Hats initiative that allows girls to get exposed to careers in construction, skilled trades, manufacturing, and engineering as well. So we've been doing that for about 15 years. We served about 10,000 girls here in Chicagoland in the U.S. and through our annual global conference for the past 5 years, the Every Girl's a CEO virtual career conference. But the culminating piece is for girls getting a chance to interact with great business leaders, great people across industries and sectors like Cecilia, doing job shadows. That's that kind of take your pebble to work day, mini internships that give them like a week's worth of experience. And then we want to see them keep going down that career pipeline, because Cecilia demonstrates a level of philanthropy in a couple of different ways. But now she's showing for other individuals in their jobs and their businesses that you're not really leading if an automatic part of you is not mentoring the next generation. It makes good sense on a social return on investment, but it's a great financial return on investment to ensure she's got folks to replace her. And so we want our girls, and now 15 years, I'm seeing them come back So now they're coming back and saying, Miss Kelly, I train race horses down in Lexington, Kentucky. Can I host the girls? Sure. We'll do a girl collective and let them learn about equestrian careers. Miss Kelly, can I host girls? Because you don't do enough STEM stuff. Cool. Say less. So now she's hosting us for a job shadow at her engineering firm. So that's now where Cecilia was like, it's automatic for me to mentor and give back. Now we're seeing those girls that she's invested in, that we've invested in, say it's automatic for me now to come back and work with this new batch of 6th graders.
I want to hone in on something that you talked about there, and I'm going to paraphrase a little bit here, but because Cecilia, I want you to comment on this. When you were talking about leadership, and you were saying leadership isn't really leadership unless you're leaving it for the next generation, essentially, unless you're providing opportunities for the next people to come along and do bigger things than what you were doing. We kind of started there with, parents want their kids to be bigger and better than they are. And so can you give me your thoughts on that? Leadership meaning more than just being a manager or making decisions, but actually being someone who, carries people up the ladder, who provides ladders, who gives those next generations opportunities to take that and run with it and to do it where they want to do it.
I think thought leadership is very different than just leadership. You're either a boss or you're a leader. And right now, especially given the changing market, the changing climate for employment after COVID, a lot of restaurants, I think, struggled with turnover. I think every industry struggled with turnover and lack of people wanting to be active members of the workforce. But to be honest, I don't think with any of my businesses, because I have a restaurant in New Mexico, I have a restaurant in Chicago, I have, other spaces in Chicago. We didn't experience that same thing because of the way that we lead. And I think thought leadership is important. It provides upward mobility. It provides cross-pollination of different industries. It is more purpose-driven. I think it's caring from an empathetic and a human standpoint, because sometimes you can see things as a leader that maybe an active member of or an employee can't see, or someone who works with you.
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's your duty to lead them in a way that maybe makes it feel more fitting or purpose driven for them. In restaurants, maybe you don't want to be a server. Maybe instead you want to be a host because you love, taking care of people and having that interaction. Or even, as far as, the topic of immigration, of being that person to care about, you're not just coming to work every day. I care about your well-being outside of work. And so I want to make sure that you're protected, that you have legal representation, that you know your rights, or even more so, on a day when it gets busy in any occupation, your team needs to know that you will be there beside them to do every single thing that you're asking them to do. And I think that's the difference between a leader and a boss. And so I think that's why it is important to be a thought leader, to lead with empathy and compassion, because if you're not, then you are a part of the system that does think people are a number or that they're disposable, and they're not, because teams that care about, or leaders that care about, I think, their teams, they have more stable businesses, they have less turnover, their businesses are taken care of as one of their own. And also they get to promote people up and out. I always say, if I could retire and somebody were to take over all of the business I have and I could just be a surfer, that would be great. I'm totally good with that.
Yeah.
And so I think the idea is always to reinvest in the next generation, but also provide the mobility of that, because that's how we build communities. And so I will say, from Brownsville Winery as a small incubation system, we've had a chef who went and opened his own restaurant. We've had a manager who's opened up Mahari in Hyde Park. We've had our sous chef who now is executive chef of a restaurant that he opened, that we designed in the South Shore Cultural Center, called Nafsi. So how do we create an incubation system that continues to grow the community that we care about and we love? And it's the empathy, and it's investing in human beings. And so it starts at the young age, but it carries through every aspect of business. And that's how you create businesses that, now my executive chef from Nafsi comes back, Don D. Robinson, and he trains some of my new chefs of how to be an executive chef. And so all of it comes back in full circle. And so I think that's how you build systems that feel really, that incubate each other. And that's how you build a community.
Yeah. Polished Pebbles is now at the 15-year mark, correct? Mm-hmm. So I'm assuming at this point you're starting to see some of those return on investment pieces where some of the young girls that started are now going out in the world and doing their thing, going to school or doing their trade. And what are you hearing from them as far as what the program did for them and how they want to give back? I know you mentioned some of them saying like, hey, I can host this program or that program, but for their communities, what are you hearing about, what these young women are contributing to the community and how that's sort of changing things around them?
Well, I think in a couple of different ways. One, they're taking a risk by demonstrating to the current younger girls that they're working with is, no, you can be from the far south side of the city and you can love animals. Yeah. So the fact that she is working hard and is not all jazzed up and cute, every day when she goes to work and is working with horses, it sets and shows a trend of another way that you can be successful. And I think this thing of you get up and go to work and love it every day, which is not necessarily something that a lot of our kids associate when they think about work, because their parents and their families may be under or unemployed and not working in careers. So I think that's one of the things that we're starting to see, as a shift and as a trend. And then now they get savvy enough that one of our partners is the Hyatt. We've worked with the Hyde Park Hyatt for over 10 years. And then as they built the boutique hotel down the street, the Sophie, they were the first ones to say, we'll host the Polished Pebbles mini internships. We had one of our girls go through that 2-week half-day internship, Tasia Sayers. She hated it at first, quietly, because she didn't think she would have to learn front of the house, back in the house. But now what she did, once she got hired full-time, she's been promoted twice. And then she says, well, my sister was in Polished Pebbles too. She can work here too.
Wow.
Oh, well, here's another young lady. So they're not only becoming employees, they're becoming managers, and now they're becoming job creators as well. So I think that they automatically get it. And it's amazing to me, stuff they picked up on from 6th grade, our tenets that they're still carrying with them now at their kind of quarter life period.
Well, I assume for these companies that are bringing in the interns, they're saying, oh, you're with Polished Pebbles? Yeah, come on board. We've had great experience with you. We've seen what can happen when we partner together. So yeah, jump in on this. And that speaks a lot for you and the organization, but I think it also speaks a lot for the participants, for the people who are going through it, because as you were saying, they're listening, they're paying attention, they're learning, they're observing, and maybe they would have gotten these opportunities other places. Maybe, Boys and Girls Club or someone else would have come along and provided something. But I love that it's like you're taking out the maybe. There's no maybe about it. It's like, no, they're going to get these opportunities because we're going to provide as many as we can. We're going to encourage them to provide them for other people. And networking is really about just connecting who you know with who other people know, right? And it seems like this is really what's happening here in a very natural, sort of organic way. But when you kind of step back and you look on all this, what do you think about what you've created and sort of where it's gone and what do you hope for the future? Where do you want it to go?
It's exciting to be able to work with people like Cecilia and some of our other partners that we have some of the same core values. That kind of human empathy part is really important. The visionary part, the excitement of this is my blank canvas and I can say, we've done this, but what about? Yeah. And you got somebody courageous enough to say, yup, let's try it. Let's do it. It's the accountability piece. Yeah. Sometimes business can be really easy and really great, and sometimes it can't. So when we can support, one another in that aspect, I think it becomes really exciting. What you see now is the work that we're doing here on the south side of the city is inspiring other people.
Yeah.
And so you see the demand, and especially at times like this, to make sure we're still creating girl-centered spaces. How do we increase the impact with our young people, and particularly with our girls? And that's when budgets may be kind of, vulnerable. Yeah. So now we see other communities, which we have for the last 10 years, saying, hey, we're in Dallas. Can we get a piece of that down here? And so our Every Girl's a CEO program, when we look at the next 15 years, has student guides, but it also now has an instructor's guide, and we're doing trainer. So we've got a pilot going in Clark County schools in Las Vegas, and we're excited. They just got their CEO kits yesterday, and the kids were excited. So now, how do we train other school districts to say, it doesn't matter if you got a small amount of money, but if you make this investment here, now you can go from serving just 30 of your middle school girls to serving all 100. So we'll see the impact in the people's ability to say, you don't need a Kelly Fair to be a girl expert. We got girl experts, people experts, business experts right in our own neighborhoods, right in our own cities. And we just want to give people the resources and the tools to be able to unleash that.
Yeah.
So now we make a decision that every girl has access. Every girl has the ability to get trained and prep. And we're creating the right kind of ecosystem to make sure every girl, in fact, can see and be a CEO.
Yeah. Cecilia, I'd like to get your thoughts on sort of the same thing from a CEO perspective of why that just makes sense. Why it just makes sense to give people opportunities and to kind of unleash them into the world to do whatever it is that they have planned for their lives. Diversity is obviously a hot button right now, but and we'll leave the political side of that alone. But just from your perspective as a CEO, why does it make sense for as many different kinds of people to come into your space and speak into it and sort of live in it and grow it, really?
I think the internet has changed. The internet and TikTok and social media has really changed the way that people access information. And there is very little barrier of what's real and what's not. And so things that might seem accessible, like being an influencer, isn't necessarily always a lucrative business path to being a successful adult or a successful contributor to community. And so we don't build communities with influencers. That is it's a different genre that's building something else. And so for us to continuously grow and build our community, access to upward mobility or access to information, access to pathways is exceedingly important. And that means twofold. One, can you look at a skill set or look at a pathway of a career pathway, and can you see your way through that? Can you see yourself in those shoes? And I think I represent somebody where, when we had Polished Pebbles, we looked at an empty lot and we stood in that empty lot, and the girls thought it was crazy. There was bugs in the lot. There was an empty Patron bottle in the lot. The lot had been empty and horrible for almost 30 years, longer than most of the girls have been born. And the reason why that particular job was so important was because I wanted them to see that in less than a year, coming back less than a year later, that lot could have the mayor, it had a marching band, it had beautiful flowers, it had barbecue truck, it had, it had almost everything that made it a vibrant space that felt beautiful. You celebrated, and they were a part of imagining that space. And I want every young woman or every person, from wherever you are, it doesn't matter where you are, to be able to look at an empty lot and know that they can be an active participant in building something beautiful in their community, and know that you can do it in short order. That is a little bit accelerated, which is why I brought them, on that experience. But I think the accessibility to that makes them feel like they're active participants in the shaping of their communities, and that's how we build our communities. But more so, they know that they can be in those leadership paths because they're already entitled. I want them to feel entitled. I want our young women and young men from our communities, regardless of where they're from the South Side, from South Loop, from South Shore. I want them to feel entitled to say, this is my community. Yeah. I know what answers my community needs because I live in this community. Yeah. And I want to be able to be an active participant in building this community. And so that's why I think it's that level of entitlement to leadership. It's that feeling that you are an active player in the building of your community. And that's how we change and build communities. And so that's why, mentorship is important. And that's why specifically building young leaders in our community is extremely important.
Yeah. Wow. Well, this has been amazing. And I'm going to go back and listen to this many times, I'm sure. I'm so thankful that you gave us your time. I do want to make sure that you get to shout out your socials. So if you can share with us where to find you, the best place to find you. Of course, we'll put all that information on our website, but if you can share where people can find you, because I know they're going to want to connect with you.
Absolutely. So folks can find us on social media at Polished Pebbles. They can find me at K Fair the Mentor, and at our website, www.polishedpebbles.com.
Right.
All right, and my name is Cecilia Cuff. You can find me at thenascentgroup.com. That's the THENASCENTGROUP.com. Most of our projects are linked to the Nascent Group. Otherwise, you can always stop by and find me on a warm day at Southside Sanctuary on 47th and King Drive, or at Bronzeville Winery Wednesday through Sunday. We've got a delicious brunch or happy hour.
Yes.
And we're on 44th and Cottage Grove. That's Bronzeville Winery. And our handles for the Nascent Group for all social media is the Nascent Group. So
Amazing.
Really excited to help anybody who's interested in finding out more about mentorship, about community development, about grants, and specifically in the city of Chicago, the grants that are designed to build businesses on the South and West Sides. We've got a great landscape for development, and there's so much that just is there for the taking. And so I would love to help tour guide anybody through the process of being an active participant in building up beautiful communities that are thriving.
Yeah. Wow. And you can do that over brunch, so even better.
Brunch and wine makes it so much more fun.
Great. Well, again, thank you so much. And thank you to our listeners for tuning into this episode of the Bridging Chicago podcast. Again, if you didn't catch episode 1, be sure to go back and listen to that, and then rewatch this one. And make sure you follow all of our socials and check out our website, www.bridgingchicago.com. We post all the episodes there. We'll post all the information on where to find these two amazing women and their organizations on there as well. So make sure you visit that website, www.bridgingchicago.com. Come back next week for the next episode of the Bridging Chicago podcast. And again, ladies, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Bridging Chicago, as produced by the SATC Solutions Center. Nothing contained in this podcast shall constitute financial, investment, legal, and/or professional advice. No professional relationship of any kind is created between you and the podcast host or guest. You are urged to speak with your financial, investment, or legal advisors before making any investment or legal decisions. Furthermore, the opinions expressed in this podcast are not necessarily the opinions of SATC Solutions Center, SATC Law, or any of its employees. This podcast is created by the hosts and guests' individual capacities. All opinions on this podcast are or have been rendered based on specific facts, under certain conditions, and are subject to certain assumptions, and may not and should not be used or relied upon for any other purpose, including, but not limited to, or use in or in connection with any investment purposes or legal proceeding.